Growing up, I had dreams and aspirations, but always felt like the kid that didn't fit in. For the most part, I wasn't a bad kid, but when I made the transition into adulthood, I turned to the streets for guidance. This led to getting locked up in juvenile hall, doing time in CYA, and eventually a 120-month sentence in federal prison. I had a lot of time to think and reflect during my federal sentence, so I share with you what I learned, hoping I can positively influence someone else's life with Prison Talk.
Now, I want to talk about what leads from going to being a straight A student to being a criminal. You know, a lot of times people don't really understand the psychology behind a kid, why they go bad or why they do the things they do. So I'm gonna kind of break it down to you a little bit from my perspective and some of the people I know around me that were also good students that went bad, you know, that got in trouble. You know, you go through a transition roughly when you're around 13, 14, 15 for young male boys. And, you know, you're really trying to define yourself. You're trying to, you know, be a man, a young man. You're going through puberty. You're transitioning from junior high to high school. You know, you're getting more involved with girls. There's a lot of things that play a factor. For me, you know, making that transition from being a kid that didn't really get into any trouble to being exposed to a lot of things that were potentially troublesome. Mom's going through a divorce, moving from one neighborhood to another neighborhood. All this played a factor. And, you know, when you have all these elements, you know, single parent, and just a lot of pressure, you start looking at things differently. You know, you start, you know, trying to search for solutions. So, you know, going from one environment to another, and even, you know, prior to my mom getting divorced, I didn't really have a male father figure. My stepdad was a piece of shit. So, you know, I started looking towards the streets. And, you know, you don't start off committing, you know, crimes for the sake of committing crimes. In my situation, it was more economics, you know, not being able to have fresh school clothes, you know, wanting to feel like you were a part of, you know, a certain culture. So, you know, my first lick was running up in a clothing store and boosting clothing, you know, and that's what was like the introduction into, you know, a life of crime. Me and the homies, you know what I'm saying, kind of got tired of just not having things, so we found a spot that was an easy lick, and we went up in there, stuffed our jackets and pants full of clothes after we tried them on, and just fucking ran, just broke. And that was the thing back in the day in our hood was, you know, going up in stores, whether it be Troop, Fila, Adidas, whatever, and fuck, you didn't have the money, you just run up out of there with it. So that was like kind of like how we got started. We used to hit, you know, stores by the mall, and you know, so a lot of these stores actually started hiring young kids that could run so that they can try to, you know, run us down, but they couldn't run us down. We were in good shape back then, so we would, you know, we would put our stuff on, and there was no way they were going to catch us. But that was the introduction to crime, you know. Mom was working 2 jobs. She was busting her ass. You know, I had a little brother and sister. You know, nigga eating top ramen, watered down milk, you know, didn't have really sugar for Kool-Aid. There was a lot of shit going on, you know. It was rough, you know. I seen her start smoking cigarettes. She was stressed the fuck out. So that's one of the, you know, things that it just the pressure, you know. And then when you have a Christmas with no tree, no lights, no nothing, no gifts, you start really thinking about what else can you do. And you know, my freshman year, I was a 4.0 student. You know, playing football, playing basketball, but I seen the dope boys, you know, in the neighborhood making money. And there were some guys at my school that were, you know, that was selling dope. You know, they were hustling. They always had a pocket full of money. And I used to have to go through the chow line and get the fucking, not chow line, after the cafeteria line and get the little government card stamped and, try to get my little meals, man. And I got tired of that shit. So I said, summertime come, I'm gonna start slanging dope. And so I hollered at one of the homies, and I had me like, I think $20 or $40 saved up, and I went and got me a double up. And that double up of crack turned into, that 40 double up turned into an 80 double up, turned into 160 double up, and pretty soon I, had a pocket full of money. So it just progressed. And once you progress into that lifestyle, you pretty much take on a lot of things that go along with that lifestyle. The mentality, you can't be no punk. The mentality that you're gonna get down for yours. The mentality that you're gonna rep something. So I was repping the hood. I was repping, my block, and I was one of the youngest dudes out there selling dope, man. Me and the homie. I was 14 and a half, 15, and we were strapped up. I had a Rambo knife. He had a gun, and if anybody ran up on us, we would pop their motherfucking ass, or they would get stuck, and that's just how it was. And after I caught my first case, I was 15, dope case. I was around basically guys who came from backgrounds that were far worse than mine, and these guys were career gang members, career criminals, and it just being around that, you harden up, you learn to handle your business, and you're programmed even more. They put you in these people's cages, man, and you become more and more institutionalized. And you become institutionalized without even knowing it. And what I mean by that is not saying that you want to go back and forth to prison, but you become more of a criminal in a sense mentally. So that time period in my life impacted me, which led to me doing a lot of other things. Jacking motherfuckers, slanging meth, slanging coke, putting down licks, just doing a bunch of dirt, man. And it didn't really sink in, a lot of that gangster mentality, because I was never taking any shorts from anybody. Motherfucker crossed me, I'll split their wig. But once I got to the federal pen and I seen people in there with 100 years, 4 or 5 life sentences, guys who had bodies on their cases, dudes who were like, mafia'd up, it made me think differently, about my future and about just everything I've done, all the karma and all the energy that led to me being in the pen with a 120-month sentence. So, parents, kids that are out there trying to prove themselves, kids that are out there that don't have a mentor, that maybe are going through a transition in life, it's all right to talk about it, man. It's all right to, share things that you're scared to share, because a lot of times it's communication. Maybe if I would have had a mentor, a male mentor, because mom's talking to me, man, I wasn't really trying to hear it, man. I'm a male, and I'm a head buster. So what is she gonna tell me? I needed somebody that I would look up to influence me, to maybe steer me in a different direction. Because my relatives, they weren't talking about shit, squares. I wasn't trying to hear that shit, because I wasn't trying to be no slave to a 9 to 5. And that's how a lot of kids feel. 9 to 5, you're slaving, you come home tired, you're broke, you can't buy a decent pair of shoes. Who wants to live that life? So parents, pay attention to your kids, talk to them, work on being an entrepreneur, share in your goals, and just be positive,